Here we are again. We're still working on the kubeadm install. And all of this decision and questions about how to set up the architecture, a lot of it, I think, I mean, the conversations we were having before we left about operating system selection and security and all of that, those are decisions that are going to be made well before you ever get to the Kubernetes installation step. But if you're speccing out the IT for a pretend company or a real company, you should probably get those things answered before you do it. But so it occurred to me before I came on the stream that there's kind of a way to focus all these decisions into one thing, and that is what does my kubeadm init command actually look like? And let me tell you what I mean. So, and one of the things that's been consistent throughout all the documentation and everything, was weird as bad as it is it comes down here and it says run kubeadm init. I mean, that's the most important thing that you're going to run, right? And it doesn't tell you what args to put. It has a bunch of things there about what arg you might consider and all these things. But I think we might be able to really distill a ton of decisions into one command. What does the command look like, right? So if I do a kubeadm, init, just not just to kind of do it this way, bin bash, just as a matter of like being able to keep it around. And I'm just gonna schmuck this for now. So, I mean, I don't even know if that's how I'm going to run it. I just want to have someplace to write it. Okay, so kubeadm init, right? And then we have a ton of things that we have to decide. And we spent more than 12 hours trying to decide what the control plane endpoint argument should be. Okay, so that's one of those things. So deciding what your control plane endpoint number is going to be. So mine is now Kate's 6443, which is pointing to and we can do another. I don't think you can do this. No, you can't. Okay. So this is going to be using, I don't think I can do this either. Can you do that? Can you put like comments in the middle of it like that? I don't think you can. I think it like puts them all together as a single thing. So that's one decision, right? And that was a big decision. So we decided to use, a load balancer and, Kate's, and kube VIP for that. And we, static pods, not using H. I mean, there was a ton of decisions just about that one command line thing, right? So if we just go, now let's go look at some of the other possibilities. So the other one that I actually missed was, what is your pod network CIDR? And this is going to decide the IP addresses for everything, all the containers in your thing. Now, I don't know what that is right now. We're going to make a decision about that. But there are actually other decisions here to be made. And it kind of, this occurred to me because the last time I remember working with kubeadm, I remember there being a lot more commands here, a lot more arguments. And we talked briefly last time about the decision to use what do I want to say here? We wanted to use external, PKI, public key initiative, stuff like that, and to manage your own public keys or to use the keys internally to Kubernetes. That is not covered here at all. It does say otherwise specify kubeadm uses network interface associated with a default gateway to set the advertise address for this particular control plane node's API server. To use a different network interface, specify blah, blah, blah. Right. Now, that, we don't need that. I don't need that, right? So to deploy IPv6 Kubernetes cluster using, so this, we would need this if we use a different subnet, right? So if we had a subnet and we put a gateway router that was going to connect that Kubernetes cluster to everything else, then we would probably want to set that. I don't have that, but again, the decision comes down to what does my kubeadm command look like, right? And that's where things get interesting. So if we go to, just any of the control planes or any system that's got kubeadm, we could go man that. We could go do kubeadm dash H or something. What? Oh, did I put cud? Cube. So now we've got, let's read all of the possible options for kubeadm. Okay. I mean, there's quite a bit of documentation here, but let's just go through this. So let's read. Let's just keep reading. So kubeadm, easily bootstrap a secure Kubernetes cluster. Easily bootstrap. Kind of a stretch. Easier than the other way, but example usage. Create 2 machine cluster with 1 control plane node, which controls the cluster, and 1 worker node where your workloads like pods and deployments. I mean, they could. That's someplace I could probably make a contribution, clean up the doc on this. On the first machine, control plane, kubeadm init. On the second one, a kubeadm init join. Obviously, that's not at all. That's the basis of it, right? So we then have to kind of qualify it further. You can repeat the second step on any of the machines as you like. The kubeadm, blah, blah, blah. Available commands. So then you have commands related to certs case. So we're just going to look at init for right now. I mean, all the other stuff is super important, but let's just look at init for right now. Kube config performs the best effort, revert if it changes. And we have token. So token is the way to get your thing. So add directory header, help, log file string, 1 output, rootfs, experimental real rootfs, help doc SQL alpha, experimental subcommands. Okay, so let's do init-h, because this is really the big one, yeah? So, and look, if I just wanted to just get it up really fast and run it, I can do that, but I don't want to do that. I want to understand it like really excruciatingly in detail. So when we do init, we also have other subcommands that we can do. We can say init does the following phases pre-flight. You can actually do the phases command and do each one individually if you wish. So we do the pre-flight checks, certificate generation, API server kubelet client, front proxy CA, front proxy client, etcd CA, etcd server appear. So I can already kind of see some stuff that's going to come up, right? We have to have the stuff related to etcd, stuff related to our certificate authority if we want to do our own. And, it doesn't say, it just says those are part of the phases that are here. But let's go through that. Write kubelet settings and restart the kubelet. Control plane, generate all static pod manifests for the control plane. API server, control manager, scheduler, local. And I happen to know what those things are. I just want to skip those for now. kubeadm, kubelet. So, I mean, there's lots of subcommands of this. So, kubeadm init and take the flags. kubeadm init and the command if you want. So either flags or command. Available commands phase. So if you do phase, you can individually say, I want to redo this one phase. This is why I keep saying that being able to read kubeadm, the source code for kubeadm, is actually a good way to know how to set up a cluster, what is actually happening the hard way. So flags. So this is the part where we really have to understand it. API advertise-address. API server advertise-address. The API address, the API server will advertise that it is listening on. See, this is interesting because that's not the same as it was explained in the documentation. The IP address, the API server, will advertise it's listening on. If not set, the default network interface will be used. Oh, I take it back. That is if you have multiple interfaces on a machine to lock it down to one. right? Otherwise, it's going to use the default network address for the machine. So that would only be if you had either a bunch of virtual or real network interfaces on your computer. So we can assume the default on that. It's just going to use the default network interface. One of the reasons I want to do that is because I don't. I mean, let's take a look. I don't know. I don't think I have to set that. Let's go check. So if I went to SSH control 1, what are the interfaces, right? Oops, I did it wrong. What are the interfaces? So, God, we have a lot of interfaces here, right? We have, I mean, this is a system that's already had Kubernetes installed, and it's already had a container engine installed. So look, CNI has, also been installed from, I believe this is the CNI that was set up by Creo, which we saw earlier today. And I mean, here's the actual, this is the default. This is the one the API server would talk on. It also says default here. No, group default. Sorry, that's different. That's not the default interface. Now, you might need to specify the interface. I'm not sure, right? This is one of those, is it better, is it safer, the sorry to indicate the interface, right? I mean, we do have two things here. Now, the one interface is the virtual IP, and the other interface is the I don't know what this one is. Oh no, this is the actual IP, and then this is the this is the cube via, this is the cube. This is the cube, the address with kubeadm. Define the address with kubeadm. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So, but what I want to know is, should I have forced it to be the virtual IP, or should I have kept it as the other interface? They're both pointing to the same interface, right? So this one is just different. I mean, we didn't ask ourselves that question at all. I don't think we need to do that. I think we just use the default, but I feel like we might need to put that in there. I mean, it's the same interface, right? So the question is it when you have, first of all, I'm kind of shocked that this is showing up here. Also, this is a /32. So this, by the way, friends, this is something that was made by KubeVIP, and I'm kind of curious as to why it's, first of all, why it's /32. I never specified that. Instead of /16, I don't know why that would be 32. I mean, it appears to work, right? We've started to use this number for everything, and this other one, the round robining, stuff like that. We haven't added another control plane node to the virtual IP, but this is the virtual IP, so I am sort of interested in why that is there. But more importantly, I'm trying to decide if I actually need to specify API server address or list. The IP address of the API server will be advertised it's listening on. If not, set the default network interface loop. So that interests me because, I mean, I assume this means for the kubelet. Hey, recursion tree. I assume this means for the kubelet, and this does not mean the virtual IP address. I think that is, well, no, definitely. Okay, so I've answered my own question. I mean, if we were using HA proxy, okay, if we were using HA proxy, we would have, we wouldn't set this number to the HA proxy virtual IP. I mean, that's I don't think we would do that, would we? I don't know. I'm guessing no. But that's really a question I have, and I kind of want to look at that. I'm guessing no. So Should I set to virtual VIP or local? So Kubernetes API bind address, according to the reference that you are referencing, IP address on which to advertise the API server to members of the cluster. This address must be reachable by the rest of the cluster. If blank, the bind address will be used, which you would add as a back-end node in the load balancer. Yeah, I figured as much, but I want to be sure of that. Yeah, I mean, I think it would have to be the same because stuff that initiates connections and stuff like that. I mean, you know, all the internal networking. This is old data. The address of the kubeadm server will advertise as an address that will be listed on it. If so, it's the IP address used to advertise the master. We use the address when we add worker node to the cluster. I'm starting to think it's the virtual IP. Yeah. Muscleman, I think it's the virtual IP. Because is the IP address used to advertise the master. We use this address when we add a worker node. So when you add a worker node, you don't want to associate a worker node with just a single control plane. You'd want the worker node to talk to any of the 3 control planes. Yeah. Never mind. You know why? Because that's covered by control plane endpoint. That's okay. I think I figured this out. Since it gets passed around the control plane nodes. That's what I'm wondering. So you have the control plane endpoint, which very clearly is the thing that you're going to give to your joins. And so what I'm wondering is, when the node joins the cluster, I think whatever you set as the address is what the cluster will use to communicate. When we do a join, we pass this, right? We don't pass this. So the API advertise address, the IP address, the API server will advertise it's listening on locally. If not set, the default network interface will be used. Well, the problem I have is that the default network interface has 2 IP addresses. And also, how can you tell what the default network interface is? How can I determine which is the default network interface on Linux? Yeah. I know how to do the network interface. I want to find the default. How to use the default network interface on Linux. I can't remember how. Let's see. Here's a current non-networking function. I just have to do it. I've taken it from Bob here. Destination. Yeah, so what? Ethernet 1. Yeah, but how do you know that? Because it's the first one listed? SMC code. skip that. Well, the good thing about Linux is that almost everything is open source. Config. Does it have a way of finding the default network interface? Exactly. See, the question is about the good old Stack Exchange, but that's not the default. That was the question. God damn it. I don't think I know what you're talking about, the default. Then why the fuck did you answer the question? What I meant by default is this. Check the output of the first command. Fucking Stack Exchange. Typical Stack Exchange. People answer questions not listening to the question. It's not the default. How can you... These people are so stupid. Stop answering questions you don't have the answers for. If you don't have the answer, then don't try to answer it. IP route show. It should give you the default route, and that can give you an idea of what the interface is. Nice. That is an answer. Thank you. I'm guessing route, yeah. I haven't used the route command in decades. I haven't, man. I have not. Yeah, we do the route default. Is there a route command now? There's an IP route now. Okay. God, it's been so long. All right, so there we go. Default. That's very easy. So IP route show grep default. There you go. So that is, maybe that's what they were saying in that thing. Well, I'm gonna put that command in a note. Yeah, I know route's a command. It's been a long time. That's the route submit command that underneath the TCP/IP tables and stuff it calls, right? It's super duper low level. You usually don't ever mess with it. We used to though. Yeah. Yeah. IP routing table. Directly. This is a direct. You almost never do this. You can if you know what you're doing, but it's almost always better to use IP tables or we used to use what was it, IP chains. Anybody that old enough to remember IP chains? There's probably one or two people that remember doing IP chains. IP tables took over. Are we still doing IP chains? We're probably not. I'm pretty sure it's all IP tables now. And even then, we're not directly manipulating IP tables anymore. Now we're using whatever. There's like some other abstraction on top of that. Default IP interface route. IP route default. No, IP route. What did you... Well, we can agree that the world has improved, yeah? I mean, that's how old I am. I don't remember. I remember that shit. That's funny. Yeah. Why does it make me feel good that makes you feel horrible? Maybe because you had to suffer through it like the rest of us. So many people are like, what the hell is IP chains? They don't. Stuff changes fast. Anyway, so I got that in my notes. Yeah. Use IPC. What was it? FreeBSD long ago. Because of that. Wow. Well, see, I was just talking today earlier about maybe wanting to switch to BSD with all this craziness in the Linux community. And I have never felt the pull from BSD more strongly than I have the last few days. All of this Rust kernel shit that's been... I know Rust is still probably going into BSD too. But just the absolute craziness around Linux right now. has really got me longing for the direct simplicity of BSD and stuff like it. And I won't lie. I mean, there are so many different Linux ecosystems right now. Do you use NetPlan? Do you use Network Manager? Do you use, there's like so many different layers of low level infrastructure that you have to become acquainted with just to do basic system administration, depending on the Linux distro that you're using. And so like when you invest in a specific distro, Red Hat, SUSE, Ubuntu, you're pretty much married to that thing. It's so hard to keep up with all the rapid pace of changes of all the internals. And it doesn't, not just systemd, right? All the other stuff. So the pull of BSD has never been stronger. But stuff in BSD lags behind. I know. That's what ultimately I had to conclude. If they ever successfully figure out how to get LXC to work on BSD, and I don't even know what I'm talking about. That's such a low level thing. But if they were ever able to make a compatibility layer that's performant, that is LXC and not jails or whatever. I know BSD is like, no, we're gonna do our own thing. But if they could figure out some way to cross the boundary, they could potentially get the container world over to BSD. The thing is, the BSD people don't really give a shit about containers. They're like, no, it's a complete mess over there. Do we have to cite all of the, root socket mounting that Docker did? And all of that is put in this like horrible, there's beehive on BSD. And the BSD has the same thing, it just doesn't have the same adoption. And whether it's better or not doesn't matter. It's like beta versus VHS, right? But I get the sense that the BSD people are like, screw you, we don't care. We're not gonna follow you off the edge of the cliff with your LXD stuff. So that's going to keep them from ever getting adopted, like in the mainstream, in the container world. If they could figure out a way to do a compatibility, I could see people flocking to BSD like crazy. I mean, binding to a C group, I imagine so. Yeah. No, you can't. That would be a specific threaded permissions thing. I don't think you could do that actually. I would be really surprised. Yeah, it's still the same process. So, yeah. Route show pipe to fault. API server advertise address. All right, so we got that. Back to our thing. For VMs and containers, they win. Yeah, they absolutely would. It's never been their priority. That's the only problem. The BSD people are so smart and disconnected from giving a shit that they probably wouldn't do that. They're perfectly content being the go-to operating system for pretty much all network hardware. They're like, we're fine with that. We don't need to play in that other user land space where people fight about window managers and shit. They're like, we don't need that. It's one of the reasons I really like BSD actually. Because they're just so high above everything else that's going on. They would never do something like eBPF. eBPF would be so silly to the BSD community. Like, what you want to do? So, I did get an up, yes. So we're just on the Paul network on the CIDR. Right, so we're going through the kubeadm command like line by line, and seeing what we're missing that we might still need. I'm so tired though. API server bind port address. We don't need to do that. That's the default. API. So here we go. API server cert extra sans. Optional extra subject alternative names sans to use for the API server serving certificate. Can be both IP address and DNS names. Not aware of that. Filling holes in. Oh yeah. Cert-dir. The path where to save and store those certificates. Etsy Kubernetes PKI. I mean, I sometimes wonder if we should put it someplace else. If you put it there, it's likely to get overridden if you have other certs someplace else on the system. I wonder if that's only the place to write them versus the place to grab them from. So the cert stuff is, I'm paying really close attention to this because this is when we make the decision to use our own certs potentially to generate self-signed certs. Yeah. It does that on its own. And there, there's lots of ways of doing this. Last time we talked about certs with everybody when they were here. Not everybody's here right now, obviously. The kubeadm certs command, yeah. So I've last I heard, no, you don't want to let Kubernetes in an enterprise environment that cares about security. You do not want to use the internal certs generated by kubeadm. You want to make your own. Yes, you can use kubeadm to make your certs. Using the same OpenSSL libraries and stuff that are internal to that. They're completely compliant with everything else if you want to, if you don't want to use OpenSSL or another tool. But it's probably in your best interest to become familiar with certificate management outside of Kubernetes and then plug it into your Kubernetes when you're installing it. And there's a huge implication there. The implication is that you know how to run a PKI, for your company. And I don't. I honestly don't. I would not say, I mean, I can learn it, but I am not comfortable saying I can deploy PKI for your entire company and set up a CA and everything like that. I can't say that. So, but as I said before, the kubeadm init arguments are a catalyst for determining what things you still need to figure out. Whoever said that is correct. Yeah, it was Tony Fa who said that. So who I implicitly trust with anything related to this kind of thing. So this is not something that is even covered in the kubeadm guide. As far as I know, there is no warning whatsoever about your use of internal certification authority. In fact, the number of things that is not covered that are prerequisite decisions architecturally, very important ones, before you even get to the kubeadm install init step, is stacking up so high that in the book or guide or whatever that I end up making out of this, that's a noob's guide to setting up kubeadm and all the architectural decisions you have to make up to that point in flowchart form. I mean, it's just huge. It's just huge. There's just so much that you have to decide, and that's one of them. So getting all excited because you want to run a cluster and like running up and doing kubeadm init because it says that's all you need to do, and then realizing, oh shit, now I need to swap out all these certificates. They do touch on enterprise deployments, but they do it as they don't tell you this. It says learning and production. This is a production environment. See, production environment, getting started, production environment. You would assume, and this is, I'm not going to get mad about it, but I'm learning. The documents are so fucked up that they like later on, after you've already followed the step for doing kubeadm init and forgot things, then they say, oh, by the way, you can come back around and say, if you really want to do your own thing, instead of using kubeadm this, use kubeadm --cert whatever. Like, well, that would have been nice to know before I actually ran it. Now I have to destroy my whole cluster and go restart it, rebuild it. which is something you probably need to get used to doing anyway. And then somebody else has said, well, you really can just go back and change it in the config files. I'm like, okay, these are all things I probably need to know how to do, but they're also things that would have not been necessary had I known to do them before I ran my kubeadm init for the first time. And so that's what I'm trying to get out of this. I'm trying to create a logical flow of the bigger decisions that are related to Kubernetes, but not directly Kubernetes. They would probably say that's not Kubernetes problem. They do that all the time. They punt and say, well, load balancer has nothing to do with Kubernetes. It actually kind of does, because you have to provide it to the client endpoint argument. So it does have something to do with it. And I mean, as you can see, there's nothing related. There's also the Cree socket thing. So if you try another container runtime on the list, to use a different container runtime if there are more than one installed, which I would never do. That's like installing more than one runtime on an endpoint is just absolutely asking for disaster. I like the wagon before the horse. Done dealing with a lot of that lately. Yeah. So I'm reading the arguments just to see what the options are. I believe that I'm going to be having this. A cert-dir. I don't believe I'm going to be using the same cert-dir as a default for Kubernetes. If for no other reason, then if somebody comes along with kubeadm on my endpoint, which they probably wouldn't, but assuming you have multiple admins, they might come along and might just run the default, right? Well, they just blew away all your certificates. So I personally am going to put my certificates in some sort of safe place that is known to me, so that goes with my infrastructure decisions, right? Rather than have them be in the default that's a Kubernetes place, which also implies that they are only Kubernetes certificates, right? We don't want that. I mean, there's a reason. There's an argument to not doing this though, because if you do this and you let it generate certificates, and that certificate directory contains your overall production certificates that may or may not be. I mean, they should be obviously copies. You might end up blowing stuff away there. So we have the certificate string, the key used to encrypt the control plane certificates in the kubeadm certs secret, which is interesting. That's an argument. Why are they doing it as an environment or as an argument? The key used to encrypt the control plane. We're going to put that on the argument list. We're not going to prompt for that. We're going to fucking. That just terrifies me. That is so bad. Yeah. The path where to save the store the certificates. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to point to the certificates in a different place. The fact that they would do that is sort of super annoying. I have a feeling that I can't set up my own certificates during the init command unless I want to compromise the security of my system by putting my certificate keys on the fucking command line for everybody on the system to see. And I'm sure there's some idiot in the Kubernetes land saying, well, you're supposed to do this as root on a secure system. I'm like, okay, but there's still no reason to violate basic security practice by telling people to put super secret stuff on the command line. Or hard-coded into other tools. Yeah. Yeah, this is really disappointing. Path to kubeadm configuration file. We do not need to change that. The certificate key is, I mean, if we have our own PKI and we use our own certificate key, which you probably should, and this is the thing, I'm not a real PKI pro. I have a feeling though that we should probably put our own encryption keys on there, so that they're not sitting at rest without some form of decryption. So Control plane endpoint string, we have that. The socket, we have that. Runtime, is there a socket to connect to? We have that, and we're going to use the default on that. If empty kubeadm will try to auto-detect this value, use this option only if you have more than one CRI installed. We don't. Dry run, don't apply any changes, just output will be done. Okay, that's cool. We should probably use a dry run on that. So, yeah, I'm going to add dry run. Yeah. And features gate string. A set of key value pairs that describe feature gates for various features. Options are public keys, ECDSA equals true, alpha default, rootless control plane. Default is false. Unversioned kubelet config map. Help for init. Ignore p-fight error strings. We're not going to turn that on. Image repository string. Choose a container registry to pull control plane images from. This actually is going to need to be set, because if I'm in my world, it's not going to be the internet. That's actually really important. So, how's it going? So if you do not have access to the internet because you're setting up Kubernetes internally in an enterprise that doesn't have internet access, which is pretty common, then you're going to need to point this to your internal registry. And if your internal registry is already in another cluster, like it's Harbor, I'm pretty good. So, in fact, the whole conversation about whether you have to have a registry set up internally before you even do a Kubernetes installation is very convoluted, because Harbor is, the preferred way to run Harbor these days is to run it in Kubernetes. So you have that chicken and the egg situation going on. You get internet access on your work computer for 3 months. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. So you literally couldn't do anything because you could talk. Yeah. So, knowing how to redirect the image pods, this might be considered a minimal thing, but it's probably common. It does raises a question. Should I spend time setting up an internal container registry before I set up Kubernetes? Now, the answer to that is no, because if I do that, I don't understand, because let's say you're working for a really, really, really closed enterprise. How do you even set up a container registry without, you'd have to, I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know what you would do. Kubernetes and Docker. Oh, big difference. Kubernetes is for managing, orchestrating containers. It's kind of like, Kubernetes is kind of like an operating system, and that has tons and tons of containers that run on different machines, and they're kind of like processes. Docker's just for the single one. Hey, Christy. So it's a very legitimate question. Yeah. What do you do? Okay, so you've been given a task. You have an enterprise that has no outbound internet access whatsoever. It's a very, very locked down, say it's the government or something. Very, very, very locked down, no internet access. Yet you want to run a Kubernetes cluster internally. Okay? We'll say the NSA, right? Well, just as one of them. There's several, but let's say, how do you do it? You can't set up a registry. You can't set up a Harbor until you have a Kubernetes cluster. And you can't set up a Kubernetes cluster until you have a registry. And round and round you go. The only way I can think of to do that is to install and set up a container registry that does not depend on Kubernetes, that is completely independently installed, which you can do with Harbor and Portis. And then, after that moment, I imagine GitHub Enterprise has some form of container registry as well. And then what? And then you do your Kubernetes set up a Docker registry. I mean, the only time I've ever used a Docker registry was when, well, that doesn't count. I was using kind can be used as a registry if you're using kind. Yeah, so it'd be like you install kind locally, and then you would get your images that you need, and you'd have to pull all those images down, and you'd have to buy, you know, on kind of a black box thing. You'd have like a system that's on the internet. You'd pull down the images, and then you'd bring the image files over, and then you would load those files up into a local kind registry, enough to bootstrap the Kubernetes cluster that's going to run Harbor or whatever, and then you build out the rest of your registry in there. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, this is not a question that comes up usually because they're like, what? You don't have internet access? What the hell? In fact, so much so that in our fictional scenario, we've decided that we're using a zero trust environment, which means people do have internet access, which means that, you know, the default kates.gcr.io is okay. And if you do that, everything else is kind of easy because you could set up, you know. Yeah, I mean, the question then is like, well, if you want to run your own registry versus use a public one or something, you want to give people access to public images at all. And I think in my fictional scenario we probably do, but in a more locked down scenario that would not be happening. You had to do this on an air gap network? Really? See, this is why I'm asking. Because air gap networks are a thing. The kind of organizations that are interested in running Kubernetes on-prem tend to be the same kind of organizations that like air gap networks. Not always. The kind of organizations that are okay with using the cloud or GCP or Azure are also the kind of organizations that don't require air gap networks. So architecturally, you're going to find people that are going to want to use, they're going to knowing how to set up an air gapped Kubernetes installation is a thing. It's a thing that should be doable. In fact, it makes me actually question my decision to use a non-air gap network. I already had to violate this in order to, and I tried to set up my own apt mirror, because in an air gap network, you know, how do you do that, right? So let's assume you're in an air gap network and you're highly, you know, secure. You would set up your own mirrors. You'd validate your own images using Ubuntu Pro or something like that, and that stuff you'd have to set out how to have a privileged host that could set up the mirror for Ubuntu Pro and get those images, and those images would be available internally, and then everything in your internal air gap network otherwise would talk to the internal mirror, the Ubuntu Pro mirror. What is the name generator for your points? I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have a name generator. So yeah. So yeah, anyway, I'm just, I mean, I don't, okay, so yeah, I don't know. In my rewards, I don't know what that is. I don't have rewards. Like AR things. Hello. No, I don't speak Spanish. I wish I did. I love Spanish and Portuguese. I wish I'd spoke it. I do not. I point things. I don't know. Name generator. Oh, that. Oh. That's like if you wanted me to pick a name while I'm coding. Yeah, it's just silly. That stuff is not really maintained. I have other fish to fry like Kubernetes. Docker files to the runners on the networks to get my images, really. Yeah. I mean, I'm pausing here because there's a very real part of me that does not sneaker jet to external drives. Yeah, there's there's a very real part of me that wants to do that. However, the pain and suffering to manage an air gap network is so high. They were scanned and oh god, yeah. The the pain and suffering to do that is so high. I think it is beneficial to learn those things, but even for my enterprise scenario, my actual work scenario, we don't require that. So, and it's a pretty conservative organization. Um, in this particular case, they would probably be turning on some sort of SOX proxy to pull down those things and do it, set it up, or using Scopio to copy it over. So I've decided yet again that I am not going to do an air gap network. Um, it's reaffirmed, I guess. Fictional use case. Reaffirmed access to internet for control planes in imaginary business case study scenario. Decided to try an air-gapped deployment later in life. Because I really want to understand what you would do. Best choice you can make. Yeah. Yeah, air-gapped is like a totally different beast. But I want to consider it though, because some of the places that I would work would have that. I'm marketing, you put it on a hat. You're talking about labor and serious stuff, and I'm marketing. Redeem, hats off. My hat isn't even around right now. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. Oopsie, what'd I do? I screwed up something here. Okay, so it's just got too many considerations. It really does. I mean, from just installing the operating system, just to start there. Yeah. I mean, we did a little of it. We got a little taste of it. We downloaded all the debs and looked up all their interdependencies. We downloaded them on, pretended like we downloaded them onto a separate machine. It was on the internet. But if you're going to do a true air gap thing, you should probably scan your images and stuff before you, or your packages, and make sure you got legit stuff. Which is why people do things like Ubuntu Pro. I might actually do, when I do the air gap thing later, I might actually do Ubuntu Pro. It says it only runs on 5 machines, right? Either by Pivotal or go public cloud. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I want to remind myself what Pivotal covers. What does Pivotal offer? Motley Fool. It's growing fast and losing money. It's kind of funny. Pivotal's total revenue grew 28% over. That's funny. That would be the first hit. Why is Pivotal EMC and VMware want it to be your platform? EMC and VMware both want Pivotal to be. God, that's some big players there. I'm kind of interested in this. It's super boring for most people, but for like yawn. This is to help you go to sleep, everybody. You can go to sleep. Okay. Cloud Chronicles is written by Network Senior after Brandon Butler. Pivotal is the company to watch. The spin out being led by former VMware chief Paul Maritz has assembled technology from EMC Now that VMware is going to Broadcom, that should be interesting. They bought Pivotal. Who did? VMware? Who bought Pivotal? VMware or EMC? Wait. The spin up being led has a similar technology from EMC and VMware, as well as a variety of other stuff. Pivotal wants to be the place where enterprises build big data analytics. Huh. Yeah, Pivotal offers a variety of application development tools, data management. Who currently owns Pivotal then? Pivotal's just getting started. 6 months old. When was this written? This is crazy. I was going to say. Yeah. Hey, we should go work at Pivotal. 2017. They've already been bought. And then they got bought by somebody else. And now they're losing money. Until 2018, they were losing money. That's the only thing we have on Pivotal, really. Is DSX on him now? Who owns them now? I'm missing something. 1,000 people. Founded in 2013. I wonder if that tells you. No. Huh. July 27th. What benefits does Pivotal offer? I don't even think they're around anymore. 2018 was Pivotal retention. Huh. I mean, there's a lot of on-prem competitors coming up now, but they don't do the entire thing. Was it EMC that did it, though? Oh, here we go. Let's go to pivotal.healthcare. Pre and post support for our clients. And that's not the same thing. It can't be. It can't. Here. VMware actually owned Pivotal, but VMware is owned by Broadcom now. Huh. And then everybody left. Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons to use the cloud for companies right now. VMware completes acquisition of Pivotal in 2019. Shit. Leading cloud native platform provider. This is crazy. This is like really old. And then VMware has been bought by Broadcom now. And then all the important people left. You're not still there, though. You're here in the chat. Pivotal stockholders may obtain free copies of documents from the SEC. VMware signs definitive agreement to acquire Pivotal software in 2019. VMware closes 22.7 acquisition of Pivotal. And then Broadcom buys VMware for like, was it $8 billion? So Broadcom to acquire VMware for approximately $61 billion. Did I ever get that wrong? Shit. GitHub was like $8 billion. Hey, Shars. What a huge acquisition. I think I want to say GitHub purchase. I think it was $8 billion. Microsoft acquires GitHub, $7.5 billion. Yeah. That really gives an idea of scope of that purchase, the VMware purchase. That's a drop to get Activision. Are they actually going to buy Activision? Activision has a bunch of stuff under there, right? They got money, man. Microsoft is like buying stuff up. They bought Minecraft was $32 billion, I think. And they brought Bethesda. So Get Minecraft. No, it was Mojang. How many billion? 2.5 billion. I thought it was more than that. They bought for 2.5 billion. Bethesda. God damn, they have money. They have so much. Bethesda. 7.5 billion. Microsoft paid exactly the same amount for Bethesda that they paid for GitHub. What does that mean? They're not lost to smite, I know. They bought the same for Bethesda as they did for Activision. I mean, but the whole AMD purchase got shot down. That was like a VMware purchase. I know gaming does. Yeah. Gaming's way more profitable for companies for sure. Activision. I didn't know Blizzard was under Activision. I feel so dumb. I did not know that. I did not know Blizzard was Activision. I knew they were buying Blizzard. That part, didn't they already do that? That already went down, didn't it? Overwatch 2 is out, I know. I'm going to try it. Activision Blizzard. I know, that's the first time that I realized that Activision and Blizzard are the same thing. I knew about Blizzard. To purchase Activision by another. I already thought the Blizzard deal was done. 68.7 billion for Blizzard. I want to say I already knew that they bought Blizzard. No, that's not true. No, I did know that because I knew that they were going to be in charge of Overwatch now. So Microsoft owns Overwatch, right? To bring joy to the community. Activision bought Blizzard in 2010, and then Blizzard. So there's been a lot of consolidation. This is interesting, and they bought Club Penguin for I think it was 7 million instead of billion, like way back when. I remember that it was in the Second Life days. 68 billion. So Blizzard is worth as much as VMware. That's pretty interesting if you think about it. A game company is worth more than all of VMware, who could be credited at popularizing virtualization in the IT industry. That's how big a deal gaming is. Seriously, people, that's how big a deal gaming is. So there's definitely money there. Man, people, that's where they put their money, man. People have nothing else to their name, and they will buy a game every time. They can be completely dirt poor and have huge debt, and they will still buy a game. We've learned this. The concept of VR and AR, absolutely. The passion tax makes the devs earn nothing. Oh, I know. Yeah, the devs earn nothing. I know it's the whole industry. And people say they want to be software developers, and I know we're in the software and game development category. It's kind of heresy to say so, but the last thing I would recommend somebody become is a game developer. If you want to do that, do it on the side where you can enjoy it and have fun with it with your friends and make something. Maybe make a Super Meat Boy on accident. Don't work in that industry. I just cannot stress that enough. I cannot believe people do. It just burns them out and spits them up, and they're like, okay. 5 basic concepts. What's game is conditional if else statements. Yeah. And big old algorithms and AI. Anyway, so back to non-game topics. Those are fun topics, though. Interesting. So Pivotal got acquired by VMware, and I was trying to think about what people would do in those different environments in the on-prem environment kind of thing. Actually, I have to keep staying with my imaginary scenario, which is a poorly funded think tank of machine learning people dedicated to helping with social studies and research, who is primarily funded by grant money and stuff, who has to comply with government regulations. That is my target pretend company. I keep saying that, but I have to keep reminding myself that if I was helping that company, some of the decisions I would make are very different. For example, that company would not have an imposed requirement to have an air gap network. It's not so pretend. Well, we'll pretend like it's pretend. So, FedRAMP is a thing in public cloud. Yes, it is. Yeah, FedRAMP. Let's go look up some of the FedRAMP. The Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program is the United States federal government-wide program that provides a standardization approach to security assessment, authorization, continuous monitoring, and cloud products. In 2011, the Office of Management and Budget released a memorandum establishing FedRAMP to provide a cost-effective risk-based disclosure. So this is the thing. The CIA themselves is outsourcing their stuff to the cloud. I mean, Amazon had it all wrapped up, and then Trump came in and gave the whole contract to Microsoft. So the fact that top secret classified information is being used over the cloud, and Amazon had to do a bunch of stuff to prove, I think Microsoft had to do the same thing. They had to do a bunch of stuff to prove that they could fulfill the federal requirements for security. Now, I don't think they've done it personally. I think that the Chinese and other people are just laughing all the way to the bank and hacking everything. Like, oh, you're going to put all that stuff on Azure cloud? Great, thank you. I just think it's absolutely terrifying that any private, but governments have been using private contractors forever. Google, we know this from the Snowden stuff. Google has regularly been providing direct access to all of its internal data to the federal government. So the government regularly partners for the sake of better security or compromising our security on purpose in the case of the Snowden stuff. Because of that giant NSA data center in Utah. Yeah. We were talking about the NSA data center in Utah. Yeah. But yeah, the government clouds are not connected to normal infrastructure. No. There are a number of, I know for a fact that they're like Waters has been talking about. I know for a fact that there are air gap networks that do not touch the cloud. So when this is why I was so taken back by the CIA is using Amazon or Azure. And I was like, what do you actually mean by that? Because I guarantee you Carnivore is not on the cloud. It's like, so, like what we were doing with the things, if they need stuff from Amazon or Microsoft. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Right. If you're, I mean, it doesn't matter what the SLA is contractually. If they just can't do it, they can't meet their SLA, we die. I mean, there are things that need to have. I mean, this is why I really like talking to Het Tanis, who actually has worked on contracts like NOAA that are of that level, and so it does. When I'm making these considerations, I mean, I know it's just like, why can't you just use kubeadm and install something? Every time I do something like that, and it says, oh, just let it use the default public IP address that it's going to do. It's going to use localized domain name resolution, which could be taken over. It's going to do a ton of things like that. And so when I see, an otherwise simple instruction to, use the image repository, I see an attack vector. And then I have to convince myself that, yeah, that's the data center. Yeah. Do we know it's a data center for sure? Did they finally say that? Did they finally publicly say it was a data center? After somewhere around. I think they finally said that it was. This is my home state, by the way. Yeah, this is my home state. The Utah data center. Wow, this is a extremely large amount of data for this top secret installation. It's a NIST path on OpenStack and reverse engineer that. So the data center, also known as Intelligence Community Comprehensive National Cybersecurity Initiative Data Center. What a crazy acronym. Is a data storage facility in Utah, United States intelligence community. It is designed to store data estimated to be the order of exabytes. Yeah. Yeah, I knew about. I didn't know this was the one. Yeah, there's a show on Netflix about some of this stuff. Yeah, the one that talks about the room that nobody knows about. It's not even in the architectural plans over at Google. That's they have first-hand Googlers telling them about that. It's pretty amazing. That's where carnivore and everything lives. Yeah, there are like segments of areas in Google. I mean, this is reported directly by people who worked in network infrastructure at Google, and they were told that they can't go into certain places. Um, and then they actually tell the story themselves. What is carnivore? um, and they these are these engineers, and they tell their first-hand account. We could probably find them on YouTube. They tell their first-hand account about how these areas of their IT department, the actual building structure, were omitted from the maps. They were omitted from the architecture and everything. And they're like, wait a second, there's not supposed to be a room here. And nobody, it was like highly, highly, highly top secret. And it's now pretty well known that space was where all the government surveillance went on Google campus. So yeah, I mean, it's no secret the government's been spying on us through Google forever. I mean, Snowden really made sure of that. Whether you like what he did or not, that there's no debating the results of that. So, so yeah, yeah, and this is that new facility, the petabyte. It's in the middle of nowhere. Hi, NSA. We have so many people that work for the government that come in my stream. You can tell them because they have ghost in their name. Yeah. Or we have a couple of people who are like, hey, I'm in Italy today. Oh, hey, I'm down in Saudi Arabia today. It's kind of funny. I actually really like it. I mean, I've gotten so tuned into the cadence of the community here that you can kind of infer what people's jobs are by like little things they share. So an article by Forbes estimates storage capacity is between 3 and 12 exabytes. I saw that. And they're compressing it now. Ad in progress. Yeah, somebody made sure that ad happened like right away, right when I said that. That was like somebody like queued up that ad specifically for you. Yeah. I mean, obviously they want it to be top secret, so hey, don't anybody send a bomb to hit this because our surveillance would be all gone. As Linux, I thought you would be using Linux. I am using Linux. Why would you say I'm not? This is Linux. This is Linux. If you think it's because I'm using Windows as my host desktop for streaming, this is Linux. Yes. Here we go. So, image repository is the default. So, we've accepted that we're going to use the default image repository, and I'm going to just reaffirm this. Accepted the default image repository since not air-gapped. We'll do that. To import OBS to work better. The new version of OBS is better on Linux. They finally have browser sources, which you can't do streaming without them. So, there's the flex screensaver. We were looking at that earlier. Anyway, so let's go back. We have choose a container registry to pull control plane nodes. It doesn't work fine. No, it doesn't. I know you think it does, but it doesn't. No. 80% of the plugins don't work at all. So that would be a big no from somebody who has had to fight with that very thing. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It will stream. I mean, I did that. Of course you don't. But that's not fine. The opposite of fine. Okay. It works to stream. Wait, did he say only to stream? It works fine to stream for streaming on Windows, yes. But not to be a streamer. They didn't even have browser source for until like last year. I use a browser source plugin. We'll start with that. When I switched over, they still didn't have support for browser sources. You had to add it in. You had to add it in. You had to hack your OBS on Linux to do it. And they've caught up. They've caught up. That thing is now available on Linux for sure. But the other stuff, no. So choose a specific Kubernetes version for the control plane. There's a whole bunch of plugins that I would end up using. For example, the Stream Elements stuff. That stuff does work on Linux, most of it. Streamlabs also. But anything, I just was sick and tired of like finding things that are not available. And so I eliminated that problem. Most of the stuff I would make my own of, yeah. So, but Streamlabs and Stream Elements have one of the main reasons I changed over to I want to use the Streamlabs actual client, the other version of OBS, and that doesn't run on Linux at all. That was one of the reasons. Kubernetes. Choose a specific Kubernetes version for the control plane. Why did not we pick a Kubernetes version before? You know what? This is a problem because my Kubernetes. This is how I got out of sync. I think this is how I got out of sync, my friends. It was not trash. It had problems, but it wasn't trash. The entire thing with the clips, stitching together all the clips was worth it all by itself. That one thing, and then I started doing long running videos like this. But that one thing was definitely worth it. Hey, thanks for that. I think this Kubernetes version tag argument is the one that I was missing. I think I should have had that before. I think it describes an error I was having with the kubelet that was being installed not being in the same version. So that is important to set. So we're going to put 1.24. What's the specific version of Anton Cube? CTL version. McDonald's coffee signs. 124.2. I mean, I guess that's the right version. I don't know whether I should put 1.24 or 1.24.2. Yeah. Okay, so the Kubernetes version default is stable-1. What does that mean? What is the Kubernetes version for the control plane? Choose a specific Kubernetes version for the control plane. Kubernetes control plane versions. A Kubernetes control plane component that embeds cloud specific control plane. Supported Kubernetes versions in Azure Kubernetes. How do you get the Kubernetes control plane version? Is that the Docker container version? I think it is. Kubernetes versions work well, so we already know about this. I mean, this isn't Azure. Here we go. So For the past release history, see Kubernetes. Kate's version upstream 1.25, 1.24. Dragging out the COVID BS. I think that's good enough, but what I'm wondering is why it would say stable -1. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to look that up. Kubernetes version stable. I think it would probably be 1.25, and it might be a tag. Kubernetes 1.9, you receive approximately 1 year of patch support. Releases. Latest release. Patch release. Latest release 1.25.2. So this is the LT long-term support LTS release is 1.24, and it's 1.24.6. Released, God, like very recently, like last week. I am gonna put that on there. 1.24.6. Yeah. I don't understand the tagging there. I feel like it's irrelevant. Stable -1 is got to be like an extra tag. I wouldn't even know where to go to look for the releases. Yeah, releases, downloads, container images. Here we go. It's got to be a tag. It's got to be stable -1. It has to be. Yeah. Now, do we have to put the V there is the question, right? I think I might have to. I think I might have to do that. I'm going to destroy my cluster and start it up again because I want to do the CIDR as well. So, and I want to try with this version because I think that was a problem actually. So, really just OpenStack after you get your setup to compare. What? The Kubernetes OpenStack? Do they have a turnkey version of this? The other thing I want to figure out is I got to figure out my networking. It's like, if you have 2 clusters, what I don't fully understand, hey Supreme, what I don't fully understand is the implications of picking a subnet for your Kubernetes cluster that could potentially be the same for another cluster. I mean, as I understood it, the CNI stuff is just containerized networking, so it's all internal. So yeah, choosing container registry. Well, because I mean, you have to set up all of OpenStack. That's not really turnkey. Once you get OpenStack set up, which is all Python, then you can do things like turnkey on Kubernetes, right? Choose a specific Kubernetes version for the control plane. Node name, specify the node name. Well, I mean, we would need to actually do that. We could have FIS compliance with a bunch of advantage. What? On FIS compliance. Interesting. I mean, that would be a reason to look at it for sure. Yeah. I'm trying again on my fictional scenario here. What would I do, right? Would I pick something like FIPS and OpenStack? Am I going to get? I mean, once you pick OpenStack, you're kind of locked into the ecosystem. I'm not going to put down OpenStack because it's in Python. No, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to put OpenStack down because once you buy into that infrastructure, you're in. You don't get out. It's like if you commit to OpenStack, your whole IT department is committed to OpenStack forever. You better be. I mean, it's kind of like OpenShift too, right? And I mean, some companies are okay with that because they don't want to hire a whole IT department that knows how to do customized installations. Doing a highly customized installation like I'm doing right now, I have a feeling is probably an anti-pattern for most companies. I'm doing this mostly to understand the internals, just like, Hightower originally did all the really, really low level stuff, just to understand how everything works. But then when I go to evaluate OpenStack, I can say, as you said, in the comparison, I can say, well, God, yeah, but this is missing this and this and this, but I'll know what it's missing. Right now, I would not know. I can tell you right now, for example, that the whole virtual IP stuff is something that my enterprise is actually missing right now. Yeah. It's pretty hairy to set it up. So yeah. Feature gates. I'm not going to use any feature gates. We already read about those. Image repository. We're going to use the default patches. Patches consist of target patches, extensions, kube API server, merge plus YAML, etcd.json. Could be one of kube API server, controller manager, scheduler, etcd patch type. Strategic merge or JSON. Oh, man, that's crazy. I have no idea what that is. Don't waste your time with Ubuntu. A lot of people like putting down Ubuntu. Yeah. Hey, Bulver's Yeah, people are kind of into Rocky and Linux and all that. Go look at Ansible for a sec. Yeah. Well, Ansible's owned by Red Hat now too, so that's another thing. Ansible's going to be easier and easier to use on Red Hat, and harder to use on Ubuntu. And, and I could be convinced to re-architect everything on Rocky. I went that way first until I hit so many barriers that I gave up and went back to Ubuntu and haven't had any problems since. Why I hate it? I'm not hating Ubuntu. It's a really, really intense, serious, honest debate about whether to put Red Hat or Ubuntu on your infrastructure. Yeah. You can't do Debian. No, Debian is not an option. Not if you want anything to work. It's going to be an option. They just announced last week they're going to be proprietary, except FOSS things. Yeah. Pod Network CIDR. I have that. Yes. Server CIDR string. Use alternative range of IP addresses. For service VIPs. That's inside of the cluster. Those service IPs have to be the service IPs have to be exported to be okay. So that's helping me understand. Yeah. Use alternative range of IP addresses. So, I mean, this is important to me because I've seen 10.96 IPs all over the place when doing Kubernetes administration, and I've gone through the services and network architecture like 5 times, 10 times, and I still don't feel like I could fully describe it to everybody. I mean, the whole idea of pods having their own network, the whole entire thing is to avoid hard coding things so that the IPs are actually dynamically allocated and stuff. These 10.addresses never touch your network though. Yeah. Well, yeah. So 10.96.0.0 is there's a lot of people from the enterprise who are really dead set on Red Hat for all the reasons we've talked about. And so anyway, what I don't understand is how the internal service virtual IPs correspond to the CIDR pod network. And the container network is contained within the container network. So it's a part, that's a part, as I understand it, that's the networking topology and architecture that is deployed inside of the container runtime only. So yeah. Yeah, Debian's great except for when it's not, which would mean like all the time. Yeah. Yes, the driver support is there. Look, the Debian project just announced support for non-open things because they're realizing they got to change. That just happened last week. Debian announces support for proprietary stuff. Here we go. Debian accepts proprietary firmware and major policy change. This was last week. And this, if nothing more, this is proof that in many ways Ubuntu did the thing right. Instead of being entirely free software, the next release of Debian Bookworm, which will include proprietary drivers and firmware, October 4th, 2022. The non-free repo in the default install. Yep. The world's open source. So in Debian Linux's 29 history, there was one constant. Debian would never use anything but free software. Debian also, and this makes Debian people a little bit hard to work with. Yeah, Debian also defined exactly what free software was in an open source definition until now, starting with the next version. Debian 12 Bookworm will include proprietary firmware. Stop saying things like that, Wattage, or I'm going to time you out. Be nice and respectful. So, you guys don't, if you're going to attack the argument, don't attack the person. Last warning. Debian has always offered a choice of installation images that included proprietary software, but these were also labeled as experimental. This decision makes proprietary software officially part of Debian. So the Debian community knows exactly what it's doing. In September, the group voted for, quote, for incorporating non-free firmware in Debian. Yeah. Enable emotes only mode for this room. Okay, we can only use emotes now, apparently. Yeah. That's kind of funny. Only emotes for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes. This vote, like all Debian community decisions, was done with the Condor cat. No, wait, the Condor set method. I don't know what that means. The winning option, proposal E, choice 5, clearly stated superseded the Debian social contract. That they would even use something like that makes me wonder. Here come the new Red Hat Enterprise Linux distros. No, I don't want to. Going forward, you're going to have to turn that off eventually, Jalopy, because we can't talk. And I don't mind as long as they don't get mean. Hey, David. So going forward, Debian will now include non-free firmware packages on its official installer images and live images. In addition, these firmware binaries will be enabled by default. Thank you for that. Will be enabled by default when they're required. For example, if your computer has Wi-Fi hardware, requires binary large objects firmware to work, the new Debian installer will offer to install it by default. This is, by the way, all too often the case. While Linux kernel developers have long offered to write open source drivers for hardware vendors for free, some hardware vendors have nonetheless refused to cooperate. The best Linux distro for beginners. Linux Cinnamon. Woot! Someday I'll make emotes, yeah, when I have nothing better to do, which is probably going to be never. No. People have been sending me, you should see all the emotes somebody sent me, like hand-drawn emotes. They're really amazing. They're really, really great, and I'm lame. So, you didn't time Wattage out, right? Leave Wattage alone. Wattage is relatively new. Let him get the hint. All right, so that being the case, many Linux systems such as Arch Linux and Fedora have long included I was going to say, other Linux distros such as Ubuntu and Linux Mint also include proprietary drivers. Mint's my favorite desktop distro. The end. Always has been. Linux Mint, I'm going to talk to you for a second. I apologize for cheating on you with Pop! OS. It was just so sexy. It was so easy. And it looks so wonderful. And I couldn't resist. Somebody told me that I should have a go at Pop! OS, and so I cheated on you, Linux Mint. Linux Mint, I cheated on you, and I just want to beg your forgiveness. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Your stalwart usefulness, your unwavering stability. I thought that maybe the sexy, Pop! OS would do better for me, and I apologize. I apologize. You can clip that shit. I apologize. Linux Mint has been my go-to forever, and I particularly Linux Mint Cinnamon, if you have support for it in your GPU. Linux Mint has also got proprietary drivers and software such as multimedia codec, which aren't essential. Yeah, I remember the multimedia codecs being essential to me as a streamer, and I was really glad that they were there. Forget that on Debian. In Debian's case, one of the choices was to continue locking down proprietary software. And they shot themselves in the foot. I know. Not for server. Fuck no. Why would you do that to yourself? No. Linux Mint Desktop, the end. Who has XFCE would love Mint Cinnamon. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's my favorite distro. Hands down. I'm a big GNOME fan, though. A lot of people hate it. I don't. I really love GNOME. I've written desktop apps that use the GNOME API, which was a huge rift over because it switched over to CSS. They went to JavaScript for all the front end stuff in GNOME. Yeah, that was a huge deal. I think it's probably still that case. There were people that left the project over it. Anyway, so in Debian's case, one of the choices was to continue locking out proprietary software. Sounds like Debian. The selection failed to gather much support. This would have been shocking to an earlier generation of Debian developers. That's why I'm reading this. I'll come back about you. Be good. No, it's even better when System 76 handles it too. No, I disagree completely. System 76 is a dumpster fire right now. I don't want anything to do with that company. It's the worst of over-engineering hubris. Absolutely the worst. And they've dropped so many things on their face in the name. They used to be all about usability. They're not about that anymore. They're about doing cool shit that nobody wants. And I don't want anything to do with them. So, because adopting proprietary code into Debian would also require a change to the Debian social contract, it had to pass by a 3-1 supermajority. Surprisingly, it easily passed. All the Debian graybeards are gone. They're gone. They've died. They're like, okay, we need to actually... This is not your dad's Debian Linux. The vast majority of Debian users are fine with this move. As Leah Rowe, lead developer and founder of LibreBoot and OSBoot, open source boot and firmware, said, freedom is very much preferable, and a world where everyone can use free software exclusively is to be welcomed. However, we do not live in that world. Therefore, Rowe said, they wholeheartedly approve this decision. The thing that always surprises me about this is whenever really hardcore FSF people start talking about freedom, their freedom definition is highly qualified to keep out proprietary people. In other words, you are not free to choose proprietary software. So they give you this stuff. They give you this shit, this song and dance about being all about free and open and Libre, but they also want to, put a belt on you and force you to never use proprietary software. So in the same breath that they talk about freedom of choice and all this wonderful stuff, they tell you that you don't have the freedom to put proprietary software on your system by your own choice. To this day, I cannot get my head around the Fruit Loops that they have to have in their head to figure out how to make that work ethically. Like, no, that's not free software. Stop calling it free. Free software is free software that works and that allows other software, including proprietary software, to work with it. Free but not free. And I don't like it. I don't like it. Copyleft is a thing, but you should have the freedom to use whatever you want. And so finally Debian comes around and says, hey, guess what? If you want to mix proprietary software in your thing, that's up to you. But oh my God, you're the devil. That's the other thing too, is like, why look down on people for choosing proprietary software? It's their freedom to make proprietary software. Believe it or not, everybody that runs a company is not the devil, right? And that's coming from a guy who's called many companies the devil. And, whatever. I find it disingenuous. It's completely disingenuous, if not crazy. So I am not against I'm not against free software. I'm against the, Bolshevik level of communist talk about. Stallman literally said, I can show you the quote on YouTube. Stallman said, if you make a program at home as a kid, he used an example of being a child, right? If you go to school, he tried to use this metaphor of sharing cookies, right? He said, look, if you make cookies at home and you bring them to the school class, you're ethically bound to share those cookies with everybody in the classroom. You cannot come to school with cookies that you made and not share them with everyone. That's unethical. And then he tries to like make the leap, which kind of sounds like true. It would be kind of a dick to do it. It's your right to do it, but you'd be a dick, right? You could bring the cookies and sell them to your kids, to your neighbors. What's wrong with that? It's capitalist, I know. Okay, it's bad. And capitalism bad, and yeah, okay, it's got problems. But still, you can't have you making money without sharing it. Oh, I know. And so then you the idea, and so then he makes a jump, and there's this really great video of this. He makes a jump and he says, okay, so the same thing goes for software. No kidding. He's like, so let's say you create a really amazing program at home as a kid. Maybe you write a game or something, right? If you bring that game to school and show it to everybody, you need to share it with everyone. You should give everyone your game for free that you fucking slaved in the midnight oil, burning midnight oil to make, and you should give it to them for free because that's the right thing to do. Well, they sat on their ass and did nothing, and you used your free time to make a game, and they were playing Fortnite or picking their nose, watching whatever the fuck on television. You did something, and now you owe them a copy of the software that you wrote. That's so fucked up. I just have no words to tell you. I don't. And it's not as simple. So basically his total example falls completely on its face. If you make something, you have the yes, I hope that we live in a society where everyone has so much money and there's universal income, which sounds very communist. It's not. And we can work for reputation. So when we come to work, we're like, hey, I made this thing and you can all have it because none of us have to care other than reputation. Please don't claim that you made it because that would be a violation of reputation. Reputation is the new currency. That's straight out of the Orville, which it's a future I would really love to live in, where money is no longer relevant. If money's not relevant, if everybody doesn't have to depend on selling it to live, then, sharing it out of the goodness of your heart, which is what I do with it. Pretty much everything I do, literally everything, is fine. But in order for me to do that, I have to slave over here and make money at this, X and Y company in order to do that. And that's my choice. But don't go around telling people that they need to give away things for free. That's stupid. What? The freemium model? The freemium model was really a good one. I agree. Oh, your McDonald's coffee, I hate you. I'm gonna have to go get my own. Yeah, I am. I'm gonna go get some more food here. I'm kind of hungry. Also, I'm ranting. It's probably why. So this is not your dad's Debian Linux. Open source freedom is very much preferable in a world. What is freedom? I mean, plans on how to make this change. The thing that really makes me happy is that Torvalds agrees with this position. Torvalds wants to share, but also is not a Stallman. And although he's been very respectful for Stallman, he's pretty much at odds with everything Stallman says. And so I mean, we wouldn't have the open source model at all without Stallman. So he deserves credit for that, for sure. I mean, it might have bubbled up some other place, but yeah, I still think Stallman is more influential on all of the IT world in history than Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. I truly believe that. No other IT professional or person or figure has ever changed business models. He has, and freemium is one of them. Open core business model like GitLab has. Plans to make changes to this software are already in Debian Linux 12. With the new closed source software will arrive in 2023. Of course, if you insist on running a Linux distribution with no proprietary code, you can. These include the Debian-based Pure OS and Ubuntu-based Trisquel. I don't know about that one. I've never heard it. While neither has made an official announcement on the matter, it seems certain that they'll continue to ship without proprietary code. Trisquel, haven't heard of it. Of course, a year ago, most of us would have said the same about Debian. The times, they are a-changin', and that's what it says. That's from the article. For Debian to put closed source software in their release, I mean, that's, I don't know. What's going to happen next? Microsoft's going to adopt Linux? I mean, what the hell? Broadcom's going to buy VMware. What's going to happen next? Donald Trump's going to be our president? I mean, God, what kind of future are we talking about here? That reality TV show is going to actually run the country? What the hell? What kind of dystopian future is this? They're sliding inside slowly. They kind of are. I mean, they have a huge division that's doing it. They have their own Azure Linux distribution. Satya's really great for that company. I really love that he's there. God bless you, Satya. He's like really changed the whole thing over there. We will freely join the Matrix with Meta. She's the best Linux acquisition memory tool was made by Microsoft. Did not know that. Microsoft has actually made a lot of. I mean, there's smart people in Microsoft. The engineers at Microsoft are not dumb. They're generally good people. From what I've met a lot of them actually. In fact, when I was working at Teleport in Oregon, a web designer that I worked with left to work at Microsoft and make crazy Redmond money. I felt sorry that I couldn't go follow her. I was like, oh, how dare you do that? It was back in my, kind of assholey open source, free software times. People that would like work for Microsoft were like disgusted me back then. Not anymore. It's like it's usually more complicated than people make it out to be. And when people are young and are zealous, and I'm still zealous, but when they're young, they get kind of weird in their zealousness. Signing up for Mars expedition when Trump became president. We're not supposed to talk about politics. I mean, we can, but I get in trouble for slamming Trump because people like him, and I don't. I really don't care, but I just assume not piss people off without them. If we can avoid it. I don't pander to people, that's for damn sure. But Space Force. Anyway, it was kind of a joke because he's a reality TV star and he's a president. There was a time in history under FDR, let's say, where to suggest that we thought it was funny when an actor became president. When Ronald Reagan became president. Now we have a guy who has no brain cells left at all because of football, who's going to be a senator. A fucking senator. a fucking senator. Senators are the next thing next to the president. They're supposed to be. They're supposed to be so respectful and steeped in education and political service and social service. No, 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 no. We have a guy who can't keep his penis in his pants, who has children all over the place, who openly and publicly says, "Why should I care?" when asked about his children everywhere. Is a serious Senate candidate who has actual brain damage, and he is a very serious Senate candidate in 2022. I don't have words. We live in a totally dystopian, weird future. There was a time when, things like there was this implied requirement that, I don't know, you took like a single fucking civics class before you went to Senate. I don't even think he could tell you the 3 branches of government. And now this totally brain dead, mostly neck asshole is going to be a potential senator. Can you imagine? We used to have standards, and then Ronald Reagan, the actor. That's a favorite line from Doc in Back to the Future. Yeah, Ronald Reagan's the president. The actor. And we thought that was funny in 1980. In the 80s, we thought it was funny that Ronald Reagan would be coming. Can you imagine Doc coming to the actual 2023 future? Oh God, I'm just laughing. What else are you gonna do? Debian Linux will include proprietary firmware. Okay. So I think we pissed off Wattage enough to not come back. I'm so sorry, Wattage. I didn't mean to piss you off by attacking something you love. Anyway, but yeah, no ad hominem here. And that goes for me too. I mean, I try hard to follow that same guidance. It goes taking politicized lesson. They say the majority of people who voted for Trump were white males who did not have a college degree. Yeah. Yeah. Look, this is the thing that the founding fathers were right about. Oh, you're still here? Okay. I'm sorry. I just, I care. So, skip certificate key print, service CIDR. We're not going to use that. I'm pretty sure that this domain IP range does not ever go out of it. I don't think this IP range, we have to worry ever about being in conflict with that 10.network. But I don't know. That's one of the things about networking, because I thought everything used a different gateway, and as long as if it's using the same gateway, I think that's where the problem starts to come in, right? And all my internal infrastructure is using the same gateway, so that might be a problem. If I'm doing that, I don't know. A service DNS domain, use alternative domain services for my internal cluster.local. Use alternative domain for services. Cluster.local. This is the built-in. I remember that. Okay. Skip certificate key print. Don't print the key used to encrypt the control plane certificates. That's probably a good idea. God. All right. Skip certificate keeper. Okay, there we go. Skip phases string. List of phases to be skipped. No, that would be like we don't want to do like the pre-check or anything. Skip token print. Skip printing the default bootstrap token generated by kubeadm init. No, we actually need that. We need the token. I mean, we can get it again if we need to. We can use. I did that today because I forgot to copy and paste it to my join command. So that's good to know. Let's see. Token TTL duration. The duration before the token is automatically deleted. What? That's the first time I learned that the token actually expires. Does that mean I need to make a new token every time I want to join a endpoint? I'm pretty sure that's what it means. That's the first time I learned that. I'm writing that in my log. Realized that kubeadm join tokens expire. I didn't know that. The default is 24 hours. in 24 hours by default. That means you have to get another token with a token command. That's new information for me. Using, they act like browser cookies. Yeah, they're actual tokens, right? Like actual tokens, because it's an API. So yeah, tokens can be reissued for joins with kubeadm token command. That's cool because I mean I've taken longer than a day to join my other control plane stuff because I'm going so slowly, right? So if I were to go use the same token that I just did and go try to use that, it would be a different thing. So if I had copied, this is the reason this I'm articulating is because if I had copied down the join command that came out of my kubeadm init last night, and I had tried to do it today, it probably would have failed. And I would have had no idea why, and now I know. So I'm really glad we're just reading through the actual usage arguments, because there's a lot of new information here. What if the right person have vaccine as part of social engineering? What? Talking that you voted for the right person to have vaccine as part of social engineering. Having a vaccine is social engineering? That's always a fun topic. I am not against science. Science has problems. Is science manipulated by the people in power? Yes. So I don't think there's a black and white answer for that stuff. Yeah. So upload certs. Upload control planes. Hey, thank you for that. Science is not our enemy. It just gets misused all the time. It's actually the only source of truth that I believe in. Yeah, it can be used to manipulate, but every good thing that you are experiencing right now, including this Twitch stream, exists because of science. I want people to recognize that their ability to play Fortnite exists because of science. Their ability to fly, their ability to live past 40, their ability to, have orange juice in the morning. It's all science. The one thing that gets credit for all that is science. People demonize science all the time. I'm like, okay, yeah, people don't do, backup studies. Sometimes people formulate scientific studies for their own purposes. They cut out, they say fat is bad, when indeed the study that said fat is bad in the 80s actually said, no, monounsaturated fats are really fucking good. Not only are they good, they're essential, but they cut that out of the study. So it's the people that are portraying the scientific studies that are the bad people. It's not the science that's bad. There is bad science, but most of the science is really solid and good, and the scientists are on track, but nobody does that. They take what they want to out of the scientific studies, and then they spin it however the fuck they want, and then they give science a bad name. That bothers me. Tipron. How many traffic? Yeah. Yes. To exaggerate, pornography is the science. Pornography would fall into science. I think that why do you like it? That's a scientific thing. Why are humans turned down by watching other humans couple? We'll say that. I don't know. I mean, there's something to it, right? I mean, there's actual, speaking of like picking and choosing science, right? There's actually a scientific study that men who masturbate have less instances of prostate cancer. Causal, I don't know, but certainly interesting. You can go look that one up. So upload certs, upload control plane certifications to the kubeadm certs directory. So to upload control plane certificates to the kubeadm secrets. I didn't know that was an option. I like that option. I like that option. Is there a reason not to use that? Helped a lot of, like half of the traffic. Yeah. Well, I mean, the first credit card transaction on the internet was porn. There's like a whole movie about that. I'm not advocating for porn. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, as long as it's not, hurting any of the participants, which some is, of course. Yeah. I mean, if you want my opinion, watching, yeah. I mean, it just depends, but I've got a different perspective. I'm really happy to be free of that, by the way, to be free of being so hung up on every single thing you do every day, finding a way to feel guilty about every single thing you ever do. I feel more guilty about calling somebody a moron now than I ever would about some of those other things. Last Miles, what the hell? Why are you up still? I thought you were supposed to be in bed. I'm only up because I woke up at 12:30. Welcome. It was the porn, wasn't it? We started talking about porn and BSD. Those are, and optional goes through in the net plan file. What is that? QDM secrets, global flags, add directory header, log file, blah, blah, blah. We don't need these other ones. Dennis is probably taken off, but hello from Dennis. Tell Dennis hi from me too. It's funny because I've been feeling the pull for BSD all day. Yeah, all this rust in the kernel mania has got me thinking about BSD actually. So, yeah, you know what I find interesting is this didn't allow me to tie in my certs. I thought for sure it would. E6i, I saw your 6i stuff. You know what? Okay, I probably should ask you. I tried to go with my VMware ES6i install on my VM server, and I had problems with memory limitations in ES6i. I was doing it on some smaller machines, though, on a Mac Mini and some stuff. Yeah, we were seriously trying to do ES6i because that's what's in the enterprise. If you're a lot of times, right? Figure things, yeah. Install FreeBSD VM. Have you? What? I have a question for you to like ponder. I know you're going to go there, but something that I've been wondering about. So, when, if ever, will BSD embrace an open standard for containerization? And I don't think it's in BSD's culture to do things that make it compatible with Linux. So, yeah. Yeah. You don't have to answer right now, but I'm super interested in the eventual future where BSD actually and Linux agree on a containerization standard. You know, needs to be looked at. Okay, that makes me feel better that you even feel that way. I'll tell you something. If such a future exists, I mean, I would be, geez, Morty, I would be completely willing to totally bail off Linux and just say goodbye, sayonara, go have your, because there's so many things about the BSD code base that I like better than Linux. And I mean, I've had a recently reminder of some of the great stuff that's coming from the BSD community, such as OpenSense. I'm running OpenSense on my main connection to the internet right now, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's all BSD. And BSD is pretty much the gold standard in router distros. So I mean, I have long felt the pull of BSD. I really have. And I, obviously I have to live in the Linux world. So I'm super curious to see what might be in our future. I guess the primary question is it even possible I mean, is there such a fundamental difference in the underlying architectures and kernel, design that there's just no possible way that a containerization model could ever be shared across kernels or EBNF? I mean, EBNF, I get the impression. I mean, I don't know if BSD has anything like eBPF. I'm guessing no. So, good morning. It's a very deep rabbit hole. I know. I don't. I'm not asking you to go there now, but if you actually do a stream about that some point, I would really love to see that saved someplace. Somebody who actually has low level knowledge in both systems. I mean, who's actually could make a reasonably trustworthy assessment of even the possibility that could ever happen. Yeah, go raid your fridge. Take care, Dennis. So, yeah, thank you for just entertaining that question. Think about that. So something I'm back to, however, I do think it needs to be topic. It's a huge gorilla in the room there. eBPF for Windows, so BSD can do the same. It could do. I don't even know if we need eBPF. I know there's a lot of people who are really married to eBPF. I get the sense that the BSD culture would really balk at eBPF. I don't think that's what they would love. I don't think that they would like it at all. I think they would be pretty prone to not doing it. They're like, why the hell would you do that? I don't know. I mean, that's a separate topic from the whole containerization standard, which I'm like super interested in, because I mean, I'm so interested in that possibility. I may even be willing to like really deep dive into kernel architecture at some point in BSD, because I wanted to be a kernel developer for a long time. Am I capable of it? Probably not. I've got a lot to learn before I can even understand. I mean, I know what modules are. I've done that sort of thing before, but really low level stuff. My C is like abysmally bad. There's a million things, but if the aspiring Rob in me, superior compared to Linux, I know. And I've heard this thing. And so I got so much other shit that I want to do first, right? But there's a part of me that deeply wants to say, I understand the kernel. I could commit kernel code. I could make drivers and all the stuff that Dennis does all the time. This is why I love watching Dennis. I know it's C. I know. And so the reason, this is where this is coming from for me. If I can get behind the idea that BSD has longevity, that it's going to be around beyond just the go-to network distro or OS, then I would we're going to get people fighting about the code in BSD versus the code in the Linux kernel. So if I'm going to learn a low-level kernel architecture and I'm going to start really understanding, I mean, even simple things like drivers, and that's really all the rage that everybody's talking about right now for Rust, right? People are saying, oh, hey, we're going to write every driver in Rust, including all these new proprietary drivers for Debian, because now Debian accepts closed source software in their distro as of 2 days ago. So this hullabaloo surrounding kernel architecture, which has caused many people to evaluate their lives, like Christova is all about pushing Rust now. For the kernel, because she's done kernel stuff for Linux, it has got me rethinking this. It's like, hey, maybe it's time for me to like crack open some C and get good with some kernel architecture, but I really have no desire to do it in Linux. The fact that they've even accepted Rust to the level that they have and lied so much about the Rust internals on Linux, that I would rather see what the BSD community is doing. So in a roundabout way, this whole thing has made me very interested in BSD internals. Is not what you want to see. Exactly. And so the long and short of it is that this is the reason I'm now asking questions. Like if I'm kind of excited because Christmas is coming up and I'm going to do my annual, I promised everybody I was going to do Erlang this year and I lied. I'm going to do C again. So I'm going to do my annual teach myself C again, because I don't write enough C during the year. So I'm going to go through that again and practice it and remind myself how to write C. And that's got me, kind of giddy, because I'm like, there's a chance in my future that I could actually, not just run around looking for overflows and Tivoli and stuff like I did at IBM, but actually contribute something that's written in C that would go into a kernel or at the module level or something like that. And do I want to do that for Linux or do I want to do it for BSD? At the end of the day, if I became a kernel dev, which is a long shot, but if I did, what would I want to promote? Would I want to promote BSD or would I want to promote Linux? And I can tell you today, I don't want anything to fucking do with the Linux kernel at all. I don't want anything to do with it. I want to get as far the fuck away from the Linux kernel as I can as of today. And this is causing me to kind of, cozy up to BSD again and see if I can get that to run in my environment. Obviously, my job depends on Linux. There's no way I could ever do that, but it would help me to motivate me more if I could figure out, where BSD is going in the future. It's not going anywhere. It's going to still be the primary distro for some of the most significant devices on the planet. And I think Dennis would confirm that easily. So, and one thing's for sure, the BSD community needs more participation because they keep, people keep getting pulled over to the Linux side. And I feel like some very high quality engineers are over on the BSD side. In fact, on the whole, I'm going to say something that's very controversial. On the whole, the people I know who are involved in the BSD project at that lower level are worlds apart from the people who contribute to Linux stuff. I mean, to the level of, I don't even want to consider working with, Linux kernel devs. I just don't. I would rather work with BSD kernel devs. They're pedantic, they're assholes, they're all of that, but they're also like light years ahead of everybody contributing to the Linux kernel, in my opinion, from my experience. Now, it's not everybody, and somebody's going to get pissed off and bent out of shape, but I mean, so it's like who you're going to associate yourself with. Okay, enough of that highly opinionated crap. What I'm going to do now is, in case you're wondering, I am just going through the kubeadm command to find the possible options I could be missing before I go add some more nodes to it. And I should probably take a break. I've been going straight here. Oh, hey, an ad just started. I'm sorry. Sorry for the ad. I have no control over those things. They just started. And what I was looking for is a way to pass in the certificate. It says here, don't print the key used to encrypt the control plane certificates. Where can I read about using my own certificates? I haven't found that yet. Also, is my pod network CIDR limited to the 172 network, or can I just use anything? I have to read more about the pod. Kubernetes pod network CIDR. Can you really use anything? Hey, Chunk. How to get Kubernetes pod network CIDR. So is it true that the pod network CIDR is extremely internal to the pods? So if I pick 172... Oh, really? For your pods? Seriously? Aren't you afraid of that conflicting with the service virtual IP range, which is 10.96 by default, I think? I just read. I know it might be a fundamental misunderstanding of networking, but that's why I'm asking. So there's no conflict between those IP ranges, even if you're using the same gateway. Right here, see? So the service, no issue so far. Well, it might just mean the IPs haven't ever run over each other. I don't know. That's why I'm asking a question. This is my lack of understanding. I can basically describe pod networking and stuff like that, but it says use alternative range of IP addresses for service VIPs. So the default is 10.96. So if you're using 10.0/16, you're already not going to conflict with that ever. I do think it's interesting that it's a /12 subnet. It's like they chopped it up because, I mean, I think service VIPs are the virtual IPs are the important things to worry about. I think that, I mean, I want to think that the CIDR stuff for the pod network, that stuff is all entirely contained within a pod that's running on a container runtime on a node, and that networking is just really, really, really localized to those containers, right? And the only way you would have a problem with that is if you were trying to do something else in your container runtime outside of Kubernetes on that node that was trying to do stuff. That would cause a conflict. I don't know, but that's what I'm trying to figure out. Otherwise, it's completely contained to the node, not even to the node, but to the container runtime inside of the node, which is really, really, hidden away from everything else. So whatever you pick is up to you. It's also, 172.16/16 does not have as many as like a 10 dot, right? But it doesn't matter because it's just that container runtime. And so it's not like it has to be big enough to encapsulate all the potential pods on all of the potential cluster. And that's what allows us to do this whole thing, actually. This is actually one of the beautiful things. Every node gets a /24 out of the pod subnet. And a pod will get an IP out of that. The /24 subnet. Which one are you talking about? The 172? And I'm inclined to pick the 172 network because that's the same one that Docker has been using forever. So, unless it has a conflict, then it picks another one. Docker does anyway. I think Podman does the same probably. The smallest subnet you should use for servers is a /22. And for pods is a /24. It's not recommended for protection. A /24, really? I would never use a /24. Yeah, I'm /16. So Waters, do you think it's pretty fair to say that it just like the generic 172.16/16 is going to be good? Yeah, absolutely. I want a good video on this. Trying OpenBSD in a VM. Another reason to use VMs instead of containers, right? In fact, this is actually kind of influencing my decisions for 2023 Boost again. I vacillate between using VMs as the fastest way to get to a Linux terminal or to get to a Unix terminal. I tell you what, 2023 I'm going to be very picky about teaching command line skills that cross over to the other stuff. Yeah. Proxmox was not stable for me. I tried to put 14 nodes in my cluster though, and 32 is the documented max, and it fell on its face big time. And I stopped using Proxmox after that. I'm just going to use libvirt in the kube manager, but I haven't got there yet. Cubes once, yeah, /8. Yeah. But not for CIDR. That would be for the virtual stuff, wouldn't it? Oh, I don't know. That was like last month, like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I did not have a good experience with Proxmox at all. Initially, it was really great, and then no. It was the whole architecture I've determined, in my opinion, is totally flawed. I don't need real-time synchronization. The whole, what is it called? Something sync. That entire piece of architecture, I'm like, why? Why can't you just pick an API and do something like Kubernetes instead? Why does it have to be all real time? I don't know why they had to do that. Cube wants to carve up and use your entire /8. Which part of it though? We're talking about the services, because you can provide the service CIDR, and then you can provide the pods, and then you have, of course, the load balancing, which is outside of it. So, this is the default. Services are how all the apps talk to each other inside of Kubernetes. So I feel like that might benefit from a larger number, like a 10/8, but there's space as possible for pods. Do you think giving pods, the pod CIDR network, more space than the service VIPs is important? I'm guessing yes. So Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the CNI. I think for service IPs is totally fine because there's not as many, right? Yeah. I think I'm going to keep the default on that. The pod one though, so the Calico, according to the documentation, the default subnet for the CIDR on Calico is 192.168.0.0/16. So Watt is just saying maybe we need more space for the pods. And I was reading that on the Calico docs earlier. I could probably find them still. No, Calico enables the eBPF on the data plane. Well, that was cool. That helped us make that decision. I was just kind of remembering. Here we go. So Calico says, kubeadm init pod network CIDR 6.8.6.16. Service range, anything for /12 all the way down to /12 for service range, right? Okay, so these are different subnets. If you're just joining us, you don't know what we're talking about. Kubernetes has some pretty involved internal networking, which is why you have to enable bridge in all of your hosts that are doing it, because it's using its own internal routing, which, by the way, can conflict with the routing of your overall network if you're not careful. We've seen that in production, ARP in particular. So Calico config using a default 10.16 is still a heck of a lot of pods. I agree. Did you just change it? How did you change it? You just changed it just like that, and it just changed? It was like, it's not something you have to get right at the beginning? 1 million IPs, so it's more than plenty. 32 to the 20, yeah. Yeah. Now they use the 168.0 network, and I already use that for something else. I use that for VMs. Admiral, how are you? Are you doing good? I hope. If it's already in use by your network, pick a different one, replacing this with the above in the command. Sending the YAMLs that give you a deployment. Really? And then it just changes. It just restarts them. Wow. That's cool. All right. I think I have the most important decision I needed to make right now. I am going to use the 172.116 network because I like it. It reminds me of Docker. And go with that. That's still several million pods. It's not as many as the 10./8 or something, but did I say that right? Or /20, yeah, /8. Will be different than your service network. Make sure they don't overlap the IP space. So that's for damn sure, right? I kind of want to explicitly define my thing here. I like having all of this stuff here so that I can get my head around this stuff. So if I'd rather than have a default. So I am going to do the 10.96 though. 10.96.0 because I want to be able to describe these decisions to others. Yeah. If you go already deploying Calico, I always used to leave my cluster until I got it to work the way I wanted to. Yeah. I kind of wish I could do it. Okay, so I think I'm pretty good here. We did all this stuff to set up the load balancer using kubeip for this as a static pod. That's all done. What I don't see here is how to tie in existing certificates. So do we use the tickets it creates? I mean, everybody says you shouldn't use the tickets it creates. I've heard people say that at least 10 times today. And that we should do it. It's not covered in kubeadm at all. None of the docs say it. And so I'm wondering, how do I run my own PKI? And at what point do I need to do it? Can I go through and join everything up and then change all the certs? Because that's a big deal. Because everything that's using those certs to communicate over the API, I mean, in admin.conf, that's what's going to be in there, right? So those certs are going to have to be replicated again. I don't want to do it over. So I would rather get that right before I do it. But there's no argument that I can see that lets me, like there is with etcd. Etcd lets you set the CA cert and the individual certs on the command line, and you provide the path for them or even the whole entire cert. but I don't see anything equivalent to that in kubeadm at all. And I know from going through Hightower's like, really deep dive thing that's kind of dated, that, thanks for the sub, that, his dated thing, going through his thing, I know that, once upon a time you just set up certs yourself, and kubeadm does all that stuff for you now. But I don't see the method of plugging in your own certs into kubeadm. I actually don't think it's possible. There's this stuff here, cert-dir, the path where to save, if a given certificate and private key pair exists before running kubeadm init, kubeadm does not overwrite them. Oh, where did you find that? Where did you find that? kubeadm certs, is that, we have to figure out where that's linked from. That's exactly what I was looking for. Oh, I love you, Chuck. Chunk, thank you for finding that for me. That's exactly what I was looking for. As I said before, this stuff is not really, it doesn't go in order. It's kind of annoying, honestly. It's more than a little annoying. You pre-gen and then give cert-dir. Okay, that is the answer I wanted. That is the answer I wanted. I'm putting that in my log. That is not explained anywhere. And on the page where they tell you to go run kubeadm, it doesn't even warn you. It has these other warnings about getting your CNI right and everything else. Oh, thank you for this, right? But it doesn't have anything else. It doesn't have any other warnings. Thank you so much for being here. And that annoys me. All they needed was like an extra, maybe I'll commit this. Maybe this is going to be my contribution to Kubernetes, to clean up this shitty documentation. Because there needs to be a thing here that says, by the way, if you're using your own PKI, maybe that's here already and I missed it. That has happened before. Yeah, we're doing kubeadm the hard way kind of thing. Maybe I missed it. I've complained about this before and then realized I didn't read thoroughly enough. So let me make sure. So before you use kubeadm to install anything, using the Get Started Guide, it tells you what you need to do. And one of the considerations it should be telling you is, hey, if you have your own certs, make sure they're in the directory and then use cert-dir. Everybody in my chat just told me what to do, and they even linked to the page, but it's not on the actual page to get started. I mean, and this is supposed to be the only resource you use for certification. So I'm annoyed again. I mean, I am pretty damn annoyed right now. Please tell me it's here and I just don't know it. Reconfiguring a cluster, tearing down a cluster. Advanced power user. It's considered advanced power user. Really? I don't consider that advanced power user. First run your pre-checks. Oh, hey, here we go. Here we go. Oh, this tells you about the admin comp file. It's like, yeah, don't, I wrote the K-login for that. I know how to do that. We'll get to that later. The pod add-on, we did that already. I know. Okay, we'll get back to that. Core DNS pods, manage nodes, control plane node isolation, taint nodes. Holy smokes. Thank you for that sub. That's very kind. Last mile subbed. He gifted last mile sub. That's awesome. Join the token here. Token create. So this is cool too. If you need a new one. It's another thing I found out tonight. Did you know that join tokens expire after 24 hours by default? Did not know that. I read that in the documentation today while I was reading through the argument documentation. I'm learning so many things by reading all these like little pieces of documentation. All right. Here we go. So if you want to, if you don't have the value of discovery token CA cert hash, you can get it by running the follow command chain on the control plane node. etcd Kubernetes. We're going to actually move that though. And we're going to put it into our own place. They're using OpenSSL. So take a note, OpenSSL is mandatory learning. If you don't know it already, if you're like a Linux noob and you're trying to get into thing, being fully proficient in X509 certificates and OpenSSL is mandatory for this kind of work. And I'm not. I haven't. Last time I touched it was literally 16 years ago. And there was no OpenSSL command when we did it. Anybody remember those times? When you had to bow down to VeriSign? When I was at Nike, we had to call VeriSign. Can I please have a certificate? Can I please have a certificate? Back in the day, some of you will remember that. It's like that was, and there were no tools. There was no, open cert or whatever the other one is. God, what am I thinking of? Let's Encrypt. There was no Let's Encrypt. No, it was a very sad day. And for them to even give you a cert, they had to come visit you, and they cost like $2,000 to create your own CA. They had to come verify. They had to like come on site sometimes and say, okay, let's see if you're really a thing before we give you a certificate. I mean, it was a totally different world. And now we're living in self-signed cert world. It's like control plane take no change. Control plane 1.25. Oh, did it? They finally changed it. Did they? That's cool to know. Thank you, LBG. Running complete flight checks. kubeadm optional controller customer machines or cycle down. Enable root. I don't want to look at this proxy. I'm trying to look for the cert stuff. Yeah, there's no reference whatsoever in this page to the cert stuff that's been linked to from the other channel there. And so we charge $600 for one wildcard cert that is valid for 1 year. They still sell old school certs. Look at you. $600 for one wildcard cert for 1 year. Wow. That you generated by hand with love. Generated by hand with love. Our certs are baked with the finest of ingredients and fired in a stone oven imported with volcanic stone from Italy. Trust the best certs. We're not going to talk about GoDaddy. No, not today. We went down the GoDaddy rabbit hole the other night, and there were all kinds of boobs on the screen and stuff. It was not suitable for work. It is Sunday. Actually, what is it? It's Sunday. Sort of Sunday. You following me because I talked about GoDaddy boobies? Is that really the thing that pushed you over the edge? Really? All right. I'm not going to judge. So, yeah, let's use women breasts to sell DNS names. And by the way, let's make fun of nerds who are like being hugged in the cleavage of these women, these GoDaddy women providing their domain names and smiling in their off time from working on Chuck. Go look it up. Go look up GoDaddy like ads. How anybody can ever stand to do any business with GoDaddy whatsoever is just absolutely beyond me. Absolutely beyond me. We're government. Government is allowed to provide crap services for survivors. That's kind of true. Yeah. Good enough for government work. I got the booba thing. We are not going there. We're still suitable for work. We're doing good things here. But if you want a diversion, yeah, just go do a search on YouTube for GoDaddy ads. Yeah. No. Seriously, what kind of horrible people invented that ad campaign? I mean, really, truly horrible people. Okay. Create cluster kubeadm. Okay, that's the one we've been using. Where is the newfangled one that tells me where to get my certs? Yeah. So did you see the video of the woman who was the model who's in court representing GoDaddy in court? And she's like bouncing around with her Hooters t-shirt. It's just so bad. Oh, you found it again. Best practices certificates. I am about to read that one. That was the one that was also not listed anywhere. How is this listed as a best practice and not even mentioned on the kubeadm setup? I protest. Wait. LBG, you sent me another one too. Yeah, I mean, you had to find a fucking thing. I'm sorry for the swear words, but this is Kubernetes. There's going to be swearing. There's going to be swears because Kubernetes. I've ever seen, it is pretty damn hard to install. Yeah. They don't care. It's like, you know, is it the same? Oh, it is the same. Thank you very much. Yeah. Or is it? I don't know. That looked different to me. I mean, it's relatively similar. Oh, no. This is some earlier on. Thank you, OG. Okay. So, best practices certificate. Let's go fly a kite up to the highest height. I don't know why that's... Maybe it's because I'm reverting to a safe space because I'm feeling... I've reached my fill with Kubernetes. Kubernetes, PKI certificates and requirements. Kubernetes requires PKI certificates for authentication over TLS. No shit. If you install Kubernetes with kubeadm, the certificates that your cluster requires are automatically generated. You can also generate your own certificates. Oh, really? Do tell. For example, to keep your private keys more secure by not storing them on an API server. Great idea. It probably should be mandatory and mentioned in the Getting Started guide because this is overwhelmingly the policy that everyone tells you should do. You need at least 3 different CAs? Really? Okay. This page explains the certificates your cluster requires. How certificates are used by your cluster. Okay, I already know something new. So, learned that any certs in -- certs-dir, did I get that right? Cert-dir, will automatically be used. That is a huge important fact that's completely omitted from the page. Okay, back to where we were. How certificates are used by your cluster. Kubernetes requires PKI for following operations. Client certificate, I get it. I don't need to know what it does. I know what it does. Okay, so etcd also implements mutual TLS to authenticate clients and peers. Here's another problem here. So the etcd certificates, if you're doing external etcd, which I decided not to do, we're doing stacked etcd. And not external. And I believe that means we're okay. Could you use intermediate certs as a QA cert? I do not know. I don't even know what an intermediate cert is. I am sorry, I don't. I am that disconnected from certificates. And I'll be the first to tell you that I find that is a huge imposter syndrome point in my part. Being an infrastructure engineer and not having a full 100% knowledge of how certificates work in your enterprise is inexcusable, frankly. And I've just been so out of it for so long that I still haven't actually... I know I can tell you what certs do and how they work and roughly how they relate to one another and stuff like that. But having like day-to-day knowledge of how to manage certs and run a PKI in my infrastructure, I have no idea. I can talk about it in high terms, but I could never... If somebody paid me to implement it, I couldn't do it as of this moment. And that is a huge gap in my infrastructure engineering title skills. And if you are an infrastructure engineer and you truly... And there's been several who've confessed that they don't know about this as well. And I've seen people in production do shit that should never have been done that came out later from somebody else who actually understood it. And they're like, our certs are totally fucked up. People have totally messed it up because the people that tried to do it didn't have a full understanding and they were being forced to do it. There's a reason AWS private keys cost $400 a pop. Yeah, that's probably why. And yeah, it is. It's annoying. So, I mean, there's a lot of knowledge that you have to really run a PKI properly. That knowledge all by itself could probably get you a job. So knowing how to do that. I mean, Kubernetes, if it's nothing more, it's a bunch of certs, like tons and tons of certs. Same with etcd. So, and the entire zero trust, initiative is built around certs. pretty much certs and keys and stuff. So 99 megabytes. Really? You're doing your BSD install? Cool. What certificates are stored? I think I might need to take a break. And I said this some months ago, but probably a month ago. I was trying to decide if before I do my Kubernetes stuff, if I actually needed to get good with certs. I don't need to sleep. I woke up at 12:30. So I'm going to go to bed here in probably an hour or two. What's our thing? How are we doing on time? I do. I'll go. Yeah. I'm going to go till about 4. What time is it? Oh God, is it already almost 4? Shit. Yeah, we're almost done here. We're almost done. I am going to go to bed. I'm going to go to bed and I'll sleep. I'll be back tomorrow. Wait, why is that on Saturday? That should be Sunday. That should be... What's today? Today is the 9th. Save. Today. Yeah. All right, so I am going to be back. Are you using Debian and WSL? WSL 2 or WSL? Did you know WSL is still a thing? Yeah. Red Hat and Podman are using that for Podman Desktop, which really blew me away, actually. I was like, I thought that thing was dead, but no, there's like a real good use for it apparently still. So I think we actually are getting to a place where I'm willing to hand off the reins to somebody else and go raid them. Because the next time that I open my computer to work on something, it's going to be certificates. And I'm going to need a lot of sleep. I'm going to need a lot of patience and support because I'm going to need to get like really, really good with certs. I need to make it one of my most, I would say, understanding coffee as weak as well. Yeah, I'm going to need coffee. We're going to need a lot of stuff. Doing it at the tail end of my stream here is probably a bad idea. And so I kind of want to make just an entire 4-hour stream dedicated to certs. And it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful. I'll try to laugh through it and do it all, but I don't feel like adding on certificate knowledge right now at the end of the stream is probably a good idea. That's what I'm trying to get to. But this has been a realization for me. It's like, no, I had it right the first time when I said, okay, I was like, any good autodidact will constantly be creating a learning plan in their head, sometimes on paper. And, what are you going to learn? What's in the critical path to learning the next thing? Okay, I need to learn networking. I learned to learn a command line. What do I learn next, right? Knowing what to learn next and how to get to that final form of evolution, of a true infrastructure engineer or whatever. And there's been many decisions along the way to get to that. One of them, by the way, was, taking this cluster and building this whole thing. I was really great. I was like stripping Ethernet cables and, I was crimping Ethernet cables last night. I haven't done that, or last week, and I haven't done that in a long time. Building out that whole, by the way, if you don't know, this is my new Kubernetes cluster. For those of you that are new here, I have a 3234 machine server rack over there that I've been using to deploy all this stuff on. But what I'm realizing is that certs are in the critical path to installing Kubernetes and etcd and pretty much everything else. So it doesn't really make sense to learn. It's like, believe it or not, I tried to learn, I don't even want to say this out loud. I'm so embarrassed. I tried to learn Kubernetes without learning Docker first. You can laugh. If you want to laugh, you can. Think about that for a second. There's at least one person that's wondering, why is that funny? Yeah. 3 years ago, we're talking, they're smart in other things, but not that, right? I didn't know anything about it. 3 years ago, Rob, before I even had this job, I hadn't done a lot of containers because, frankly, I didn't need to. I ran my own company. I ran my own internal IT shop. I had my own multi-user clusters and servers. I wrote my own password managers and SSL cert, management and everything. I mean, and GPG signing for everything. I did my own entire thing, my own entire way. I ran my whole school, the whole IT department for that. Docker came out, I mean, really hot and heavy about 2013, 2012. And my company started in 2013. So I didn't learn containers. I mean, I knew of them. I knew they were important, but they didn't have any relevance to what I was teaching every day. At least I didn't think so. Virtual machines at the time were more important to me because I could spin one up for somebody and they could snap it back like we're doing in the beginner boost. Containers really had no relevance. I mean, I knew what they were, but other than running Minecraft in a container, which I was like, why would you do that? Just run Minecraft. It's faster and more efficient, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really get the whole thing. And certainly Kubernetes wasn't even, a gleam in anybody's eye at the time. And fast forward to the end of SkillStack, which was, I mean, it's not dead, but, it's probably 2013, no, 20, like, I'd say probably 10 years. So 2023, 2020, I mean, it's probably more like 8 years actually. And I mean, in terms of meeting with people in person. During that entire time, I didn't keep up with Kubernetes or containers, or I did, however, keep up with Go because I was teaching kids to code and I was like picking the best languages to learn everything. I was really obsessed with Node in 2013, actually. I was super obsessed with it. I created a whole bunch of stuff to help TJ Hollowaychuk. And then TJ Hollowaychuk wrote Farewell to Node, which was, his, in 2014, his declaration, he was going to do everything in Go from that point on. And I changed everything to Go, and I'm super happy I did because that put me like way ahead of the curve in terms of like knowing Go and how to code it and stuff. And I still am, pretty advanced Go developer. I'm not the most advanced, but that left me with tons of gaps. So basically, this is me justifying to the world why I did not know. I mean, I knew what a container was. I did not know that Kubernetes depended on containers at all. In fact, at the time, I thought that Kubernetes was better than Docker, that you could use Kubernetes instead of Docker. Which is actually true, especially in 2023. But at the time, I never made a Docker container. I never used a Docker file. I never composed one. I think I maybe used a Docker file one time. Yeah. Today in 2023, it's not that wrong, right? I mean, I was like, why would I learn? I mean, I'm all about trimming the fat on what I have to learn. And I was like, do I actually have to learn Docker Compose? No, I don't. You don't. You don't have to learn Docker Compose at all. It's nice because it translates you can actually use Compose with a K, if you're wondering, by the way. So if you're wondering if it's worth learning Docker Compose in 2023, it actually is if you want to learn Kubernetes more quickly. So when do we start writing the book? I've already started, actually. Yeah. I've already got the book. It's over here. So I've got all the notes on paper that I've been taking down when I'm doing all this because I need to know like the steps. So this step is get good with certs. And that, get good with Docker, right? Then get good with certs, get good with Docker, networking is in there somewhere, and then get good with Kubernetes. I mean, that's really how it should go. And by the way, the CKA doesn't test you on any of that stuff. The CKA assumes that you have all the certs automatically. There is nothing on the exam that teaches you anything about using your own PKI certificate. It's all considered advanced. So, whatever. So, decided they don't teach you anything about load balancing. Also, advanced, out of scope. It's like, I'm glad I'm doing it this way. That's all I have to say. I'm glad I'm doing it this hard way. It's taken me forever, but this is truly the hard way. This is really the hard way. And there's going to be more knowledge come out of this that I predict than would ever have come out of doing any of those things. Docker, it doesn't require 8 gig of RAM, so it runs on Raspberry Pi. I don't understand how to do K3S. Yeah, it's a different thing, right? Decided to focus entirely on getting good with PKI certs next. So, and we've got the links to that and everything. YouTube series called cert-dir. Intentionally break and fix Kubernetes clusters. Ooh, that sounds fantastic. Russ, thank you for recommending that. I'll have to go look at that. Yeah, that's the whole chaos engineering stuff. Do they play Doom while they're doing it? You know what I'm talking about? Have you heard about that? Have you heard about the chaos engineering where you can play Doom and destroy pieces of your cluster all the time? Hey, how's it going, Mr. Kiram? Mr. Kiram, how are you? We'll go check that out. The Doom thing is pretty amazing. They're like playing Doom and they're like blasting huge pieces of their infrastructure apart. Cube Doom, yeah. I fixed a cluster on one of the cluster streams. Did you really? God, LVG. I almost believe you. Almost. I don't speak much English, but I understand. Yes. Do you speak French or Russian? Le français ou bien? Yes, a little bit of Spanish there. Portuguese. I wish I spoke those languages for y'all. I really do. I am a huge linguophile. I love languages. I wish I could speak it. I really do. It added to the list of things I wish. If I could, put something in my head and just load it up, I would love to do that. A Space Invader one? I think there was a Space Invaders one too, yeah. You sure can ask a question. You can generally ask a question anytime. It's unusual that people from companies, but they did one where anyone could participate. Oh, did they? Oh, they did. Interesting. Can you recommend me some to implement streaming API for a website for school? No, I have no idea. I would use SRT if I were going to implement a streaming API. What do you mean by streaming API? Like actual media streaming or streaming just data? Probably something on WebSockets, right? And there's nothing easy. There's nothing easy about WebSockets. You just got to learn it. Kubevaders, yes. I would love to speak an Asian language. Are you kidding? I actually, true story. I went back to my college board before I was leaving, like literally 3 months before I had to leave. And I asked them if I could still stay there, if I could go take back my graduation, and because I wanted to learn Chinese. And I'd already learned Russian and French. And they're like, no, you got to leave. You got to go. BYU, they'll tell you they got to leave to make more room for the other Mormons to come go. Any other place, they'll take your money and they're like, yeah, stay here as long as you want. We don't care. And there's Europeans who don't have to leave at all. There's actually people in the stream that are like, should I finally leave college? I've been going to college for 10 years. And my country lets me go to college forever. Like, why would you ever get a job? I would stay in college forever if that were true. So, because I would, do side work or something. Anyway, I think we're ready to rate somebody. Does anybody have a preference for somebody we could go rate? And by the way, thank you for being here. And we're gonna go ahead and say goodbye to the YouTube stream. These are long videos. I know, YouTube. Thank you for hanging with it. But hopefully you'll get something out of them. Eventually, just in case you're wondering, if you don't want to watch all of these videos, somebody was asking me, how long is it going to take you to finish your kubeadm install so you can just tell us the results of everything you've done? I can't tell you that. It might be December. So, yeah. When will the cert stream be scheduled? Let's talk about that really quickly. Let's go ahead and go through the schedule while we're on stream so we can do that. I think it should be tomorrow. I need to get through this pretty quickly. I have the entire day off tomorrow, but I am not going to be. Let's say 2. Let's do it at 2. It might be before 2. Is that too late? 2 o'clock tends to be a good time to stream. Although, I mean, I could do it as soon as I get up. I do kind of want to spend some time with my wife tomorrow morning too. So I'm thinking like 1 or 2 o'clock. We've generally been doing 2 o'clock. I'm in Eastern time zone. Yeah. So you can look at the calendar, by the way, if you want to see it. It's here. You can go look at it, and that will display in your own time zone. So, I tell you what. Let's do noon. Let's do noon. It's probably going to take a while. So my wife is important on Sunday, yeah, but she's going to be gone too for a lot of it. My wife is so busy working on her art right now that we're at that age where we don't have to be glomming onto each other all the time. But it is nice to be with her. So let's do that. Let's do wait. Where's the anger sign? Head explode. Where's your head blown? Where's your blowing up head? Mind blown. Mind blown. Where's the emoji with the blown up head? Brain. Okay, we'll put like brain explode. Your head explode. Explode. Oh, there it is. Exploding head. Here it is, yeah. Oh, but so yeah. Learning certs. PKI. Yeah. I got to tell you, I'm kind of excited and also not excited. It's such a fucking boring topic. It's so important, though. So many people are getting owned because they're doing these things wrong. And we just have to know how to do it. We really, really do. So have a dream thinking about it. Okay, look, I'm finishing on time at 4 a.m. Look at that. So let's go. So YouTube, if you want to be around tomorrow, we're going to try to do certs. I do have some things I got to do tomorrow for the backups now. For the etcd backups, we're pretty far away from getting a cluster up, so I have to decide. I'm probably at work tomorrow. Anyway, I'm planning in my mind. I'll do that later. I love certificates. I love LAMP. Oh boy. All right. YouTube. Bye, YouTube.